Hey there, let's talk about sharing collections and environments with Postman. So why share things? Most people working on APIs are not working in a vacuum. They're collaborating with other people, they're communicating with people, and frequently they're creating references for their APIs. You can't talk about sharing collections environments without first talking about workspaces. So what is a workspace? A workspace is a view of all the Postman elements. So your collections, environments, mocks, monitors, your activity feed, your integrations, and also some other things like your history, presets, and global variables fall under a workspace umbrella. There's a few different types of workspaces. So everyone has access to personal workspaces. So if you're working with collections in your sidebar and it gets a little bit too cluttered, you have the ability to create personal workspaces to organize your work. For Postman Pro and Enterprise users, there's also the idea of a team workspace. These are workspaces that you can share collections and environments and all those other elements in a team workspace, and it's meant for collaborative work. For Postman Enterprise users, there's the idea of a private workspace, which functions very similarly to a team workspace, except you can control who actually sees it. So it's kind of like a hidden workspace unless I invite people to come and collaborate. We'll talk a little bit more about how collections and environments and other elements are synced in a team workspace. So at Postman, we use workspaces in a few different ways. We have different products like a mock server, identity service, a lot of different products where we create a workspace to organize all of our collections in. Other companies might have different functions. You might have a marketing function, a technical writing function, a QA function, and you can create separate workspaces for all of these functions so that you can organize your work accordingly. Workspaces are an unopinionated tool, so you can use them how you want to use them, but we'll just talk a little bit about how we've seen people use workspaces successfully. Let's go ahead and switch over to the Postman app. So I'm here in the Postman app. You can see at the top the current workspace that I'm in right now. This is a personal workspace called lowercase postcon. I also have my personal workspace that I typically do my work first in, and then if I want to share it to a corresponding workspace, then I can go share it out, and we'll take a look at how to do that. If I want to go over to the Team tab, I can browse the workspaces that I belong to or the workspaces that I can join. So this one called Team Workspace, if I click that and update it, I can browse all the different collections that are a part of this workspace, and then if I choose to, I can join this workspace and then collaborate on some of these features, on some of these collections. I'm going to switch back over to my personal workspace called PostCon. So here I am in the familiar build mode of the Postman app. If I wanted to, say I was working on this collection called Postman Echo, I was making my changes, and I actually want to share it with some other team members. Click on the arrow next to the collection name and click on the orange share button. And you can see there's a few different ways that I can share. I can share in another workspace, embed, or get link. So on that first tab, I can see in this drop-down, I can share in these workspaces that I currently belong to. So my workspace is a personal workspace, but the team workspaces, I can see there's this people's icon. So if I went ahead and selected uppercase postcon and then click share, then I would be sharing this collection. It's currently in lowercase postcon, but I'm sharing it to uppercase postcon. So this collection will exist in both workspaces. Because remember, the workspace is a view of the collection. If I tab over to embed, I can see that I can generate a Run in Postman button. We took a look at the Run in Postman button in an earlier video about documentation, about communicating about your API. And then you can go ahead and select a dynamic button, and you can see there's a little snippet here that I can drop into my code, or a markdown or a static button. And here's a little markdown snippet that I can also go ahead and copy and paste into a blog post or any kind of private README or something like that. In this case, I have not selected an environment yet, but if I wanted to select an environment, it would go ahead, Postman would actually string substitute in the keys and values where I use them in my collection. So that's nice for stubbing out values that you need to tell the user they need to update with their own personal credentials, for example. So this is the Run in Postman button, and I can use this to copy and paste this code down here. And then the last option, if I tab over to Get Link, it's very similar to the Run and Postman button, but in this case, this is a URL that I can then share out to people. So for both the Embed Run and Postman button and the collection link here, it's important to note that these are both snapshots. So if I am working on my collection and I go ahead and share it out as the Run and Postman button or this collection link, it's a snapshot in time, and if I make any changes, I'll need to come back and regenerate that button or the link or click Update Link here. So the fastest way to have everything sync in real time is to share in a team workspace. But if you don't have that option, or for some reason you want to stick with the Run and Postman button or the collection link, those options are right here. So earlier we'd called workspaces a view of your Postman elements. So if I have Postman Echo Collection living in lowercase postcon, and then I share it to uppercase postcon, then any changes that I make to the collection from either workspace will be synced to my Postman account. They'll be reflected in both workspaces. If I go ahead and click down here, this toggle over to the Browse view, I can actually see all of my collections, environments, all of this metadata associated with my lowercase postcon workshop. If I wanted to go ahead and find the Postman Echo collection and share it out, I could share it from here, and I can also modify permissions. So when you share a collection, by default it's view only, but say I have one team member that I want to give permissions to edit or view, I can do that here by clicking the ellipses, and I can say one person can edit, or rather the entire team can edit, or I only want to give one person individual edit permissions. So that's where I can do that. And I'm here in the Postman app, but this similar view exists in the web dashboard, so you can modify permissions from the web dashboard as well. So let's go back to environments. I'm going to toggle back over to the build mode. And let's load up, for example, Postman API. So here's the Postman API collection. And in this case, if I'm using my Postman API key, you can see that I've selected my API, my environment, and I have my keys stored here. Now, if I want to share this environment with my team members, at this point when I'm sharing an environment, it's going to sync in real time, just like when I share a collection and allow people to edit. So this is my personal credential, and I actually don't want to share my personal credential. So what I can actually do is go to this gear icon, and I can find my Postman API environment, and I can go ahead and duplicate it. Here's a copy. I'm going to go ahead and click on it, and I'm going to say, this is the Postman API for sharing. And then I might stub this out, leave the same keys there, but say, add your own API key here. And you can either have a blank space here or put in placeholder text. I like to do placeholder text because in the API documentation, Postman will actually do string substitution, and it makes it a lot easier to read what a URL or what a header should look like. So I'm going to go ahead and update. And now I have my personal local environment, and then I have this other environment, currently local, but I've called it for sharing, so I know that I can now share this environment. Click Share, and similar to what we saw for the collections, I can go ahead and share it out to a team workspace and click Share. So that's the difference between a local environment. A local environment is just mine. Nobody else has access to it. I can keep my most secret, confidential secrets in there. And then the environment that I shared out to a team workspace, those changes made to that environment will sync in real time. And so if you have things like personal credentials, it doesn't make sense to have that live in a shared synced environment. But if it's a user profile, say I have the same type of user that everyone uses their credentials for, I can go ahead and share it out to a team workspace. So I'm going to go ahead and close this window here. Down here at the bottom, I'm going to go ahead and toggle back over to the browse mode. So we talked about collections in a workspace, environments in a workspace, monitors. When you create a monitor, we talked about that in a separate video about running collections. That's just a scheduled collection running on Postman Cloud. When you create a monitor will live in the specific workspace where it was created. So these are the monitors that I currently have running in lowercase postcon. Mocks, same thing for mocks. Mocks will live in the workspace where they were originally created. Integrations, if I click here, I'll click through to the web dashboard view. Integrations also live in the workspace where they were created. And the activity feed. In an earlier video, we took a look at the activity feed at the collection level, and this is what the activity feed at the workspace level looks like. So one last thing to point out, if I go ahead and toggle back over to the familiar build mode here, now we've been looking at the collections in the sidebar, but if I tab over to the history, I can see a history of all the requests that have been made within this workspace. So the history is another thing that syncs within a workspace. So if I'm in a team workspace, other people can see the requests that I'm making, and it's actually pretty helpful if you're doing real-time debugging. Let's go back over to the slides. So we talked about sharing collections. The best way to stay up to date with the latest version of your collection is to sync your changes in a team workspace so that the way Postman works is that when somebody makes a change, Postman generates a diff and automatically merges it to the main version that everyone's working off of. We didn't take a look at how to export a JSON file, but we saw how to do that earlier in the video about running collections. We also took a look at the Run in Postman button and the collection link. It's important to remember that those are snapshots in time, so if changes are made to the underlying collection, you need to manually refresh those links so that people are working off of the latest version. We didn't talk about publishing documentation, but there's a separate video for communication that covers publishing public documentation. We talked about sharing environments. The best practice for sharing an environment in a team setting is to either realize that your changes are going to be synced in real time, and if you have sensitive information, you can require teammates to duplicate the environment and create their own local version with their personal credentials. For monitors, mocks, and integrations, they both exist within the workspace that they were created in. And we took a look at what an activity feed looks like at the workspace level. In a previous video, we saw what it looked like for a collection. And we also talked about a shared history. So everyone working within a team workspace can see the history of requests that are made from that workspace, and that really helps with real-time debugging. So in summary, there's a lot of types of workspaces. I use personal workspaces for organizing my own work in a way that's meaningful to me. There's also team workspaces for sharing collections, sharing environments, and all the Postman data. And then Postman Enterprise users also have private workspaces that are hidden from the general public, and you need to explicitly invite somebody to collaborate in those private workspaces before they can see them. And lastly, we talked about all the Postman things that are shared within a workspace. Collections by default are view only. You can provide edit permissions to your entire team or for individual members of your team. Environments that are shared to a team workspace will sync in real time, so any updates that somebody makes will be reflected for everyone else that is working within that team workspace. For sensitive information or information that should not be mutated, users should be working off of a local environment. Monitors, mocks, and integrations all exist within the workspace that they were created in. There is an activity feed at the workspace level, as well as at the collection, team, and user level. And lastly, history is also synced within a workspace so that users can see the history of requests that are being made within a workspace.